Hello everyone, my name is Jakob Isleta, and I'm here to do my community narrative on military dependents living on base. For my interview, I was able to get someone who has recently lived on a base, specifically on Camp Humphreys in Korea. Now, what are military dependents? Military dependents are usually either spouses or children, but they can also be anyone that has any sort of familial relationship to a service member that decides to sponsor them.
My name is Justice. My dad was a first sergeant in the military in the army, and I live. He was stationed in Camp Humphreys, Korea, where I lived with him for about 3 years. So when me and my family lived on base with my dad, it was sort of like this apartment complex sort of thing. So there was these three big apartment buildings, all sort of like in a U shape, and in the center would be it was like this little playground. That's where we like lived for most of our time when my dad was stationed there. So as far as amenities go, there was really just there was the PX, which is like sort of like the shopping center, and like there was the commissary where we got all of our groceries from, and kind of besides those two things, there was a gym, and then there was like a water park. Big quotations around water park. It was basically just a pool with a slide, mostly sort of thing. So besides all that stuff, those are mostly all the amenities when we got there. One of the I think one of the interesting things about my experience is there was my mom. There's a community center, but there's nothing ever went on there. But my family started when we got after we got there, my mom started the theater sort of program in Camp Humphreys, and that was a big sort of thing around the community that kind of brought a lot of like people together, not just the dependents, but some of like the enlisted people. They would like to do shows and stuff, and it had like I think it took every few months we put on a show for them, like with like families and stuff. So that was like a big sort of experience for me. So imagine if like everyone like in your community, like all like the people like sort of all like the adults like in your community like all walk together, like they all had the same job and they all like sort of walked like in like sort of the same sort of like company and stuff. So it was like it's kind of weird because like my dad would like know most of like the people like around. So like there was like this weird like, degree like even like it was like this weird relationship like even strangers like I kind of knew because like my dad walked with them. But it was also like because like just like because most of my friends, the people like I actually knew were like also like the family and like the kids of like other enlisted people, right? Like of like other like similar rank and like position of like power position as my dad. I didn't really interact that often with a lot of officers or the family of a lot of officers. Um, like even like where we lived, like that apartment complex was like I'm pretty sure like most of the people there were like all enlisted people. So even that sort of area, like I only ever talked to and it's like socialized and played with like the families of like other like enlisted people. So it was really weird, like because like you would like know most of the people, but you wouldn't like really like socialize with them, but just because of like they were of like a different rank. That was not like ever like explicitly stated, but like I've kind of felt like that at sometimes in a weird way. Does that make sense? So my experience with like sort of the other members of my community sort of took place in mostly either the playground, like right outside of like where we lived, like the apartment complex, and also sort of the community theater. Those are like sort of the two only areas that I really socialized outside of my family. Um, I wouldn't say there was. I wouldn't necessarily say there was a strict. I don't want to say there was like this inherent like sort of class sort of structure, but there was like sort of like this subtle sort of class difference with like the kids and the families of like higher ranked officers or like higher members were like sort of definitely felt like they were almost like above us. They didn't get any like explicit like special treatment besides just better housing and stuff, but like it would like sort of come up like in conversation, like if you ever having like an argument with someone, you're getting into like a fight, that's sort of like how like that's sort of one of the ways they would like end the fight, like, oh, my dad's a major or something, right? So there's not like this there wasn't like these like strict sort of like like class dynamics. They wouldn't like get special treatment or anything, but there was like it was very there like in a subtle way that everyone sort of picked up on. So as far as like differences from like civilian life regarding like rules and regulations and laws, the biggest difference like for me at the time was IDs. We always had to have an ID whenever we went to what we want whenever I wanted to buy something from the stores or anything. You would need to give an ID at checkout or something like that. And besides that, it would be coffee was another thing. It didn't really come up too much for me since I was a very good little boy. Went home on time. But there was like a coffee for like all like the kids and no, not just the kids, but like most of like the people around base. Some of the laws I didn't know about, but they didn't really just apply to me was like the adultery being illegal. That was like sort of a thing that I kind of knew about, but just like didn't come up for me that much since I was like a preteen. I was like 14 at the time, so I wasn't gonna encounter that sort of stuff that often. So yeah, it's kind of like a big thing. I mean, besides like civilian life, you need to like since like most of the people on base are enlisted like soldiers and stuff on duty and stuff. So just like the way you would kind of interact with them, those would be different. Like you'd see someone in uniform, and like I would think like they're like oh they're it's sort of like seeing like a firefighter, like a cop, like on the street. Like you probably wouldn't go up to them without like sort of like it being important or like an emergency. So that was like you just see like a lot. Yeah, I imagine like if you walked around like town and like most of the people you see would be cops and firefighters and stuff. It kind of felt like that.
I am personally not a military member, nor was I a military dependent growing up. However, I have had experience staying on base as I have stayed with people I know who are active duty members. From my experience, I would have to say it operates similar to a small town. Similar to what Justice said, there is common knowledge of who everybody is since your spouse or parent is the coworker of that family's service member. There are stores and shops that are almost exclusive to military members and dependents. I also noticed things like different laws since you may have to adhere to the laws of a foreign country, the military itself, or the US federal government. Bureaucratic offices are held by high-ranking officials in the military. For example, Colonel Michael Tremblay is the garrison commander for Camp Humphreys and acts almost as its mayor if you were to think of it in the context of a town.